Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Josh. Up next is our plenary session 12 on regional gaps in attracting investments. And our speakers are Azra Dzigal, Destination Competitiveness Team Leader, USAID, Developing Sustainable Tourism in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Nicolas Marquier, Regional Director, IFC. Majlind Lazimi, Managing Partner, Horwath HTL. Amel, Sales Segment Director, Sparkasse Bank. And Sanja Miovcic, Executive Director, Foreign Investment Council. Once again, returning to our stage as a moderator is Rajan Datar, journalist and host, BBC.
How are you? Are you good? Amazing speeches this morning from both Edmund and from Joshua. I thought real hope there. Now, we are going to have a frank discussion here about the gaps that exist in attracting investment. One thing that I've been told is that only 1% of foreign investment into this country goes into tourism projects. Why is that? Well, we have referred to issues around bureaucracy, red tape, fragmentation. We've heard challenges about accommodation, airlift and infrastructure, and the need for collaboration and harmonization. But this is not going to be a negative session. We're going to be solutions focused. There are some brilliant examples of tourism already flourishing in the region as a whole, let alone this country. And there is, as we know, so much potential. But let's just tackle this head on, okay? First of all, I'm just going to ask each of you a basic question as to your perspective, but then I want us to kind of join into a conversation. So I'll just raise the topics and then we'll just go for it, brainstorm, all right? Nicolas, IFC. First of all, can you explain IFC's involvement in this region and what investors are telling you about the likelihood or how easy it is for them to invest in this region?
Sure. Thanks, and glad to be on this panel. So for those of you who may not know, so IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. The World Bank supports governments. Just to summarize, the World Bank supports governments. We support the private sector. But we have the same goal in terms of developing emerging markets across the world. So I'm responsible for the Western Balkans markets here. In terms of our priorities, I mean, it's really improving the productivity levels in this region, inclusion, and supporting the climate transition. And tourism is at the center of this in many of the economies here. That's a competitive advantage for some of these economies, and that we're hoping to be able to support this. In terms of how we do that, so we invest about $600 million a year in the region. And so far, I mean, that's been a lot in the infrastructure sector. And when you look at the tourism industry, I mean, okay, you see hotels and nice beaches, but you really need also clean water, airports that are functioning, and a lot of infrastructure behind it. And the risk is that the tourists come and the infrastructure is not there, and it's really a big risk that we're trying to mitigate. So in terms of how the investors look at the region, obviously, I mean, it's an emerging market. There's still work to do. And in terms of rule of law, regulations, issues getting permits, etc. But we see a very positive momentum at the moment, not only because the tourists are coming, but also because of the path to joining the European Union, the growth plan, a lot of funding for these infrastructure projects I was mentioning on the public side, but also on the private sector side, and a lot of opportunities for investors. The credit situation is also improving for these investors. So all in all, a very positive momentum and a lot of opportunities. I'll stop there. So I mean, one of the issue in that particular sector is the lack of clear strategy on where these countries are going, right? And that's something I think this conference and other discussions are pushing in that direction. I mean, investors, they want some visibility and certainty, right? So not only on the credit, on the fact that you will join the EU, but also on the fact that you will not be changing your mind in 5 years and my contract will be a stranded asset, right? Or my project will not work out. So that's one thing. The other thing is on infrastructure. I mean, there are still big gaps and not much movement. And that's where I believe the private sector could really help with development finance institutions like IFC, with the World Bank, really defining the trajectory and starting delivering, right? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sanja, the FIC is a big player, responsible for so much inward investment into this country, but relatively little in tourism projects, I believe. What do you, and number one, correct me if I'm wrong, but number two, what do you see as the stumbling blocks there? What are the problems?
Well, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me well. It's a pleasure being here today, really, and with all of you. Well, first, please clarify. You said 1%. 1% coming from public sector, I suppose, right?
I think it's foreign investment, isn't it?
FDI.
Yeah.
It's FDI. So
yeah.
Okay. Because majority of investments in tourism sector, at least in this country, comes from private sector. So I don't know whether they are part of this statistic, but you are very right. When it comes to foreign direct investment, not so much has been, even not so many have shown an interest. That's according to my knowledge. So I'm gathering more than 70 companies in a business association, Foreign Investors Council, who have invested jointly around 9 billion convertible marks. And you're right, none of them actually do come directly from tourism sector. They did, they started projects in some other industry, and then that led them to building condominiums or something like that. But direct investment in tourism, unless we had hotel industries, as you might know, a couple of investors, mainly from Middle East, who came here and really revitalized some of our mountains and attracted many tourists from that region. But thank you, Alan. But you're right. There should be. Oh, that's better. there should be more promotion. I would say more promotion, and second part of your question. I mean, the answer here goes to as tourism is applicable for any other industry. That means we are still not doing enough in kind of systematic approach, strategical approach, if you like, in promoting the country, promoting the potentials, not just promoting the potentials, promoting geographically where we are, who we are, which is, this project is doing a great job and helped us a lot about that. Also, this rather negative image that we, maybe all of us contributed to a certain extent to having a rather negative image among investors. And another thing is, because the topic here is kind of regional gap, regional connectivity, I think we should be striving more into that direction, presenting us as really like one region, one tourist destination where possible.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the kind of almost vicious circle of, if people start saying negative things about investment, it makes it worse. And in a sense, we need to stop that, don't we? We need to stop that descent, if you like. But we'll come back to that too. Majlind, Albania, we've been hearing about Albania here. It's doing incredibly well. So what are they doing right? And what can you see as being parallel situations where, you know, what they've done there and what you've done there is possible here?
I'm Albanian, so as well. I think Albania somehow might be one of the biggest winners of what we can consider tourism revenge after post-COVID period. So, in a sense, I think tourism, as many other sectors, about both content and narrative. So, content-wise, I guess the region is very rich on natural and beautiful attractions, from sea to mountains area. So, but the thing is about how you brand it, how you promote it, what is the storytelling, and then of course it's not up in the air. I mean, it's important that different countries in the region, despite that we all are aiming towards European integration, I think it's important that we start from a very macro level of what we call political stability, institutional, let's say, stability. And in that sense, I mean, different countries might have different kind of profile. But in Albanian case, for example, if you look at the figures, one of the things that I think is important that we notice that it's I think, the game changer is accessibility, I would say, or connectivity. Just to give you an example to illustrate that, the Tirana International Airport at the moment is, for 2023, was almost 7.3 million passengers, double of 2019. I mean, it's incredible, and the way how that has impacted for the whole ecosystem, including the airlines, companies, and the whole chain, tourism chain, I would say, that impact has somehow created an added value for the whole economy, and that has a bit of trickle-down effect, I think. The second thing is the conviction and, let's say, the engagement of the government to put the tourism as top priority in the agenda. And that is something that you cannot just say it, but you have to do it, not just like walk the talk. In that sense, Albania now, if you looked at the fiscal incentives for investments, for example, you have, besides VAT, which is 6%, different from the normal VAT of 20%, you have infrastructure tax is 0% for big hospitality projects. You have corporate tax 0% for 10 years. So there's a lot of, I would say, concerted efforts from the government and private sector to actually understand that this is a very good momentum for Albania. And I think here there are some lessons learned that I think even Bosnia and Herzegovina could actually learn from. I mean, and as I said, we are trying to now, together with our company, we are trying to do the National Tourism Strategy for Albania 2024-2030. The demand is there. The figures of the visitors last year was almost more than 10 million visitors, and this year might be more. So the worry that we have now as consultants is, are we ready to actually have the supply side to somehow support this big demand, big flow of people? Because overcrowdedness is at the same time an issue as well, as you know.
Sure.
So the thing is how we can combine both development, sustainable development, tourism, without creating problems for the residents, without creating too much of pressure for infrastructure and utility facilities. And I think in that sense, that still is a challenge.
Yep.
But again, I would say that we are happy what has happened in the last 2-3 years in Albania. And I think we need to do a bit more when it comes to investment promotion, when it comes to marketing the destinations, creating the DMOs on national level and regional level, which is, I think, very important, because if you don't get together all stakeholders in one platform, including government level agencies, but at the same time, regional level agencies or municipalities and the private sector, obviously tourism is not just, it's like a tango, you need both parties. So I think overall, what we have seen is a very successful story, but again, the challenges are there, and I think the regional challenges are the same. How we should promote the whole region, because if you take the whole region, it's more or less Western Balkan 6, not that more 20 million inhabitants. So it's impossible if you want to appeal to the source market like Asians or US or Latin America. You cannot just appeal individually. So I think we shouldn't compete, we should cooperate. How we should create packages that actually somebody from India would come and stay 10 days and look at the, 1 day in Sarajevo, 2 days, somewhere in Montenegro, 3 days in Albania, and then Croatia. So basically, we need to see that next stage of cooperation. We are doing that in infrastructure, on railways. We are doing that in connectivity when it comes to broadband, and when it comes to roaming, for example. Now it's I think, good achievement for the region that we have already achieved. So I think there is enough success stories in other areas, infrastructure, in services. Now tourism should be the next one, which I think has, let's say, it's a win-win situation. So rather than competing, I think cooperation would be the key word here.
Very good, very interesting. And we'll get some more examples, I think, from you as to how things could change in this region. Azra, you have great experience in the tourism sector from the Bosnia and Herzegovina perspective. Do you think the private sector should be taking up the responsibility if there is no central government body doing that?
This is a very tricky question. I should be diplomatic at the same time, because I used to work for public sector as well and private. I would say that yes, at the short term, but the long term, no. When I say short term, I'm referring, for example, for the lack of state-level tourism board. We don't have Bosnia and Herzegovina tourism board, but not even federal one at federation, because we have two entities. So the private sector was smart enough and very supportive in sense of being together, representing the country in different international affairs. Also, we as the project supported through the Foreign Trade Chamber, different road shows, international affairs, etc. But as I said, this is the solution at the short term, but not at the long term. So for sure, we will need support from private sector just to be more visible at the international market. But at the same time, it's not enough even if we have all the best private sector players from Bosnia and Herzegovina going representing the country, because as the colleague from Croatia yesterday said, Croatia is investing through the tourism board more than 25 million euros each year. So we don't have tourism board, we don't have money to promote ourselves, but this is something that the public sector for sure should be thinking about and be very fast in creating, as I said at the beginning, at least federal tourism board. When we talk about private sector initiatives where they are covering some gaps related to the government as well, we have also a situation when we talk about education, that there is requirements from the market are not meeting with the educational system here in our country. So the private sector is organizing, and again, we as the project are supporting this initiative as well. They're organizing different training just to meet with the requirements and to be more competitive at the market. I would say that also where the private sector is being very active and filling the gap is probably the classification system. So there is there are standards for different stars, hotels, etc. But at the same time, there are requirements from the market, such as different eco standards that we should apply, etc. And especially, I think that this is the point where the private sector in Bosnia and Herzegovina also realized that we need well-known international brands such as Hilton or Radisson, etc. Usually, currently what we have in our country is there is international chains, but not too many, and we have more authentic but not well-known local hotels and accommodations. So this is something that also should be the combination between private and public sector to attract investors from as I mentioned, different international brands, because well-known, etc., to attract other types of clients and other types of visitors.
Okay, thank you. Let's get to finance, which is what you're alluding to there as well. So, Amel, basically, what is your bank doing to help entrepreneurs in this region build tourism projects?
Okay. Well, I think my bank is doing a lot of things, but first of all, we are engaged into changing the perception of the role of banks in general. Because everybody knows here, I think, banks, they are important. Everything they do, it has an impact. I mean, even far-reaching impact on the economy. In our business philosophy, we are going a bit beyond this commercial role of banks. Out of the box, I call it like this. We are building financial health of our clients. This is our group strategy, group philosophy. And now back to the question. What we in bank do in order to help or to attract investments in tourism, beside products, I think we are going to talk about it a bit later. We are supporting specific industries which have potential to create new value. And what is even more important, to create new jobs. And yes, I'm talking about tourism. I'm also talking about sustainable agriculture, as example. I'm talking about startup companies of any kind. And yeah, finally, before we talk about products or services that the bank can offer, I would like to share with the audience about 2 examples when the bank kind of went beyond this commercial, ordinary role, I would say. Last year, we organized with our partners from USAID, a very interesting project of organizing a network B2B event for tour operators from Austria and Bosnia, including roadshow for Austrians throughout Bosnia in order to show them about touristic destinations of our country. And of course, main goal was to increase number of touristic visits, to promote our destinations, and it was quite a successful project. First results are already there. I think we are expecting soon first groups of tourists coming in summer 24. A couple of days ago, we decided together with our partners to continue, to expand. I think we have been discussing about to include now Poland and also Czech Republic. There's also another example that I would like to share. A few years ago, we invested in mapping of digital mapping and also physical mapping of mountain roads close to Sarajevo. Mountain is called Trebević, in order to increase attractiveness of Sarajevo destination, in a way to empower potential of the city in general. And this example of investing in hiking routes is also kind of answer how to direct repurposing of skiing resort as example, and also having in mind pollution in Sarajevo. These both examples, they might not be big stories, big examples, but I think they're really important because everybody could help. I mean, any stakeholder could do something and we need also sometimes enthusiasm like Sanja wanted to say.
Nicolas, I know that from your recent experience, you've had big projects that have been really successful in Montenegro, right? And also with waste disposal, I think you were telling me about as well.
Yes.
Can you just tell me about that a little bit and how, again, that could be transferable to this country?
Yes, so we're getting into potential solutions and instruments, and I guess, one of them is working with commercial banks to support their efforts to finance SMEs, and particularly SMEs in the tourism sector. And it's not only extending finance, but it's also capacity building, how do you manage your financials, etc. So that's something we're looking to do, and we're doing in the agri sector, and I think it makes total sense in tourism sector because you have a lot of SMEs involved, and we can do that through commercial banks. An area, and what you're referring to, is large infrastructure projects that we've delivered in the region, and those were public-private partnerships.
PPPs, yeah.
PPPs.
Yeah.
And so one of them we're working on at the moment is for the Montenegro airports, for Podgorica and Tivat, where we are structuring the transactions, working for the government to attract a private operator. And these projects are very important. Not only they will improve the infrastructure and the connectivity with the country, but also those projects are actually generating tax revenue for the government. So it's actually a benefit. At the moment in the region, and you have a number of these assets that are operated by state-owned enterprises and not necessarily making the most of these assets. So that we're supporting governments do that. The other project you mentioned is Vinča, which is the first waste-to-energy project for the city of Belgrade. Mm-hmm. So you used to have a massive waste dump next to the Danube and leaking into the Danube, catching fire, massive pollution issues. It was long to put it together, but we managed to attract a private operator to take charge of this the situation, address the pollution issue, and build obviously the waste to energy plant. So in addition to the electricity and green electricity, I guess, that you get from this, you also have steam going into the district heating for the city. how that's linked to tourism, I mean, again, if you have the Danube that's heavily polluted and you cannot touch the water and you have air pollution as well in the city, I mean, that has a massive impact on your appeal for tourists. So these public-private partnerships are a good option rather than pure governments trying to sort out the issue with public debt, right?
Are they viable in BIH, public-private projects?
So that's some...
I mean, Azra's shaking her head. Why?
No,
Why? Could you put the mic a little bit closer to you as well?
Sure. Okay. There is at the federal level, so there is, again, Federation, Republika Srpska, and state level, there is no law on public-private partnership. It was delivered to the parliament, and they are just now discussing, etc. So there is a different laws at cantonal level, so there is no good example. Actually, there is no example, not only in tourism, about PPP, the real PPP. What we have is more private sector engagement in some of the public assets, and those are actually the small steps that are good examples how probably this combination of private sector managing some public assets can be successful in the future. So this is something that we are starting, maybe with some example from Montenegro, Croatia, etc., that can be replicated to our country, can be useful, and also good practices to exchange good practices from the region. But unfortunately, right now, at this moment, there is no one example, not only for tourism, any other sector.
Okay. Sanja, do you agree? What's your perspective? What do you think?
Well, I told you that PPP is one of my favorite subjects, really, and it's really like a business model that should be more promoted and talked about it. Well, it is true that we do have a legal framework very, very fragmented. Each canton has its own law, which I don't know why they're not more applicable. We do have a kind of a nice example of public-private partnership concluded, I think, now 3 years ago, I think prior to 2020, 2019. So it is in Zenica heating plant that was made by ArcelorMittal, EBRD, investment fund from Finland, and I don't know who, and municipality of Zenica as the fourth counterpart. It's a nice one where ArcelorMittal invested 50 million into clean energy, environmental protection, and everything. It's a very good example that I also think has not been promoted enough. I don't think legislation should or even could be an obstacle here, because we are talking about the project where you have contractual parties that can agree and form either special purpose vehicle, either joint venture. There are many, many things. Actually, the first PPP, the company where I used to work, implemented that one in 2008. It was dialysis centers. It was an investor from Netherlands at that time. 2008. It was, I think, Bielin, and then it spread all over the country. As I said, we are not promoting it enough. We are not proposing enough what should be done or what should be copy-pasted from the region. Yes, such a good example. So the truth is that if we're talking about a large-scale public-private partnership, that's where we need your involvement, your funding, your guidance, your expertise, and also credibility, because working with governments, as we all know, it's never an easy task in our region, maybe elsewhere as well. But I really think that let's inspire them. I think, well, we are good here. Probably we had no other option than to develop our innovation and creativity skills. Yeah. So I would use them and apply them in this sense as well, and really like propose and go to local level of governments, because that's where we have to go addressing for something. And you just reminded me of a very nice example when you're talking about foreign direct investment. Mm-hmm. Investors, okay, majority of them, at least to my knowledge, they were not directly financing a tourism project. But indirectly, yes, they did. I'm going to speak from my personal experience. I've heard about so many places in this lovely country just when the investors decided to invest. I'm going to also share an example, very nice example. There is a place called Sotkovac. I'm not even going to ask who heard about Sotkovac. Maybe 10 years ago, Messer, famous German company, said, we are investing in Sotkovac. I was like, where are you investing? Sotkovac, okay, where is Sotkovac? So I went there was nothing, just a land. Okay, so what they did, they knew there is a thermal water down there, 500 meters below the ground. They did digging, they made a factory for CO2 production. Then a couple of years later, of course, I went for the opening. A couple of years later, there was another investor interested there, and then another one. Meanwhile, you have a hotel, very nice hotel there. You have a spa facility, given that when they realized they have a thermal water down there, local investors decided to use it. So it's actually a very nice place to be. And then the other municipalities surrounding started awakening also their tourism potentials. And now you have this Azra mountain and everything, and actually many people
So it's
coming.
almost like a ripple effect. It created a buzz and
Exactly,
things started happening
exactly.
around it. So you need that to start. SMEs we're talking about here, and there probably are some potential SMEs or SMEs in the audience. Majlind, from the Albanian experience, could banks, and I want you to talk to them about this, could banks do more in terms of credit, in terms of loans? What's the experience there?
I think, it's a precondition. If you want to have a development tourism without financing, it's impossible. As we said, the private sector is the driving force. So, but I think we need to see it in two perspectives. First, I think it's about large-scale investments, and there, obviously, the local banks, commercial banks would need big guys like IFC, BRD, development banks to support them on risk-sharing facilities. And at the same time, it's about finding the right model, because while you want to protect the environment in some places, but still, if you want to, provide jobs for the communities, if you want to have more economic growth, etc., you need some large-scale investment. The thing is how you combine, let's say, investments which are sustainable. And one of the typical examples that Albania recently is quite becoming popular is the mixed-use kind of projects, which means basically you might have a tourism zone where you have hotels, residential areas, commercial areas, recreative areas. But the thing now that we are kind of suggesting and advising government is to find the right proportion of which components should have how much, because obviously the private sector would be easier for them in short term to go for residential because they maybe don't need the banks and they can have pre-sales. But then it's a matter of whether we need to build like kind of ghost touristic areas, or we want to have tourism hospitality projects actually, not just as a real estate project. So here it's a bit of finding the right momentum and balance between short-termism of the private sector to gain as much as possible whatever they invested, and the governments and regulators to see it a bit more long-term perspective. Now the other dimensions about the SMEs. I mean, in case of Albania, the coastal area still is one of the biggest chunk of the investments, let's say, in tourism and revenues. But then what we are finding interesting is and I think Bosnia should have quite a fantastic opportunity there, is the agritourism. Recently, agritourism, like small, let's say, guest houses, and so it's interesting because you can do two things. First, you don't have to have agglomeration of investments or concentration of people for 2 months, 90% of people in the coastal areas. That would be completely catastrophic for the tourism infrastructure. What you can do then, besides and stretching the season, and now we are working towards that, like Montenegro has already achieved, to go to 6 months or 8 months season, then you need to combine with incentives for inland investments, which means now you have in cities like in Gjirokastra, in Elbasan, in Berat, even in the north of Albania, where a few years ago there were no any guest houses, there were no any hotels, but now they're building up. Why? Because it seems that it's interesting. I mean, all tourists, one thing they want to experience. Of course, they might want to be comfort in a five-star branded hotel, but at the same time, they want to taste the experience of authentic and local products. And that's the only way and the good way to how to promote. And then to keep the people in those rural areas. Because if you don't keep them by agritourism, then agriculture might be still not with much high added value when it comes to revenues. So I think it's important that the banking system, obviously agriculture per se has been quite risky to some extent because of all these risks that they have. But if you combine with some subsidies on interest rates, if you combine with some, some relaxation of, regulatory, institutional support by the governments, if you can then have the international banks supporting large-scale investments together with the local banks, I think you can have a combination of tourism clusters, when on some parts you can have more family, massive tourism as we have in Adriatic Coast. But then if you go to the southern part of Albania, now we'll have a new airport there, by the way, and I think we'll have a different boom for the southern part of Albania. You still can combine with kind of lifestyle, hotels, etc. So, but again, coming to Sarajevo, I mean, I had to drive, by the way, from Tirana, 7.5 hours.
Yeah, now there's another
which is a
issue.
pity,
Yeah,
because eventually I saw the transit flights were 7 hours. So I said it's better if I drive with my car. So if we don't start to first integrate regionally, which means having at least airlines within our countries, it's impossible that somebody from Europe, Western Europe, to come for 2 days and then they need to spend 1 day on connecting flights. So I mean, we should start, as one economist says, best things first. So best things are, what are the priorities on infrastructure? And I think airports and infrastructure, waste management, these are preconditioning if you want to have sustainable development.
Yeah, these are the big projects, though. So I mean, we're running out of time, but Amel, I mean, in terms of providing assistance to new young businesses in this country, how much are you doing with Sparkasse?
Yes, I assume you're talking about startup companies.
Yeah.
Yes, we have unique program in our bank for startup companies. We do project together with our partners from Mosaic Foundation. We call it step-by-step program, and we offer the monitoring, advising, education, and finally financing of any startup company, of course, also in tourism.
In tourism?
In tourism, yes.
So this is happening to you? I mean, you are meeting entrepreneurs? And,
yes,
yeah?
indeed, yes.
And providing, offering assistance, credit, all those things?
Yes, the whole program includes everything. It lasts a couple of months, and then finally you get also finance for your ideas, like ideas we saw today in preview.
I mean, there's some brilliant ideas there, which I can see, people would want to finance. And then, But let's keep that spirit going, because it's really encouraging. I want to lock you in a room, you five, and make you thrash it all out and just sort out the whole thing. But we've got such little time to do this. But these guys are around all day. I'm giving them a job today, which is if you want to approach them about business opportunities and advice, these are the guys to talk to. So thank you very much indeed, panel, for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.